I'm Alfred.
And I'm Chris.
It is Thursday, and this is Why Wait Till Sunday. Probably a top 5 midweek college DFS show. All right. We are headed into week 3, Chris. How did it go for you last week? I feel like we were pretty on point with a lot of the things that we gave to the people.
Yeah, I thought it was a successful week for me. I think we really nailed the lettuce salary saving plays and got a lot of the game scripts right. So, I felt good about what we do. The Jabari Small injury at the last second really messed with some of my lineups. But overall, I mean, I can't complain. I did fairly well, and I think that we're kind of refining our process week over week, and I like where we're heading.
Yeah, I agree. And we hit a lot of the value plays. We hit a lot of, I thought, running backs, receivers were pretty good. The CJ Stroud, after we recorded, came out, CJ Stroud had a shoulder. He might not play. Apparently Kyle McCord was taking warm-up snaps. And so, I kind of had a lot of CJ Stroud. And then I got flustered and was unsure. We had, our resident Ohio State expert told me he would be about 80%. I didn't really know what that meant, but it didn't seem optimal. So I flipped out. I did a lot of Haynes King. He got injured, and I did a little Hudson Card in the end. He got injured. So a lot of my quarterbacks that I rostered, just had like sub 5-point days, which no matter what, that is not going to cut it. Turns out CJ Stroud, I believe, had over 400 yards passing. So if I hadn't made those changes based on his apparent but not really injury, I think I would have been just fine.
Yeah, it was I moved off him a little bit, but I still played a lot of him just because 80% of CJ Stroud was a lot better than the other options on the slate for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, I should have. And we don't know what Haynes King would have done, or for that matter, Card got injured and kind of got pulled bench. So Card was terrible, but yeah. I only had like one Card, I think. I ended up going a lot of Haynes King, and that just was a total disaster. He got injured. So what are you going to do? Well, without further ado, let's get right into the slate here. We got a very, very fun week ahead of us, I think. Some interesting games and some tough decisions that we're going to have to make. So start us off with Nebraska at Oklahoma.
Yeah, so this is our highest point total of the week at 61.5. Oklahoma comes in as a 22-point favorite. I think that's probably fair given what we've seen from Nebraska thus far. Oklahoma's implied team total is 41.75, which is actually second on the slate, and Nebraska's is under 20. I think that this is a game where Nebraska's forced to play catch up a lot of the time, and Oklahoma's probably going to get out to a big lead. So we'll see what value this has from a slate perspective, but it should be an interesting game given what we know about both teams.
Right. Nebraska just does not seem like a very good team. I actually took Buffalo last week thinking that they could hang within 2 touchdowns of Nebraska, and I was proven wrong, but I still don't think Nebraska is very good. I agree they're going to have to play catch up, but I guess as we saw in week 1, Adrian Martinez in catch-up mode can be kind of electric, can be very beneficial for fantasy, but I definitely think like 4 turnovers in the second half is also possible if Adrian Martinez is playing catch-up. So definitely a Pandora's box there if they get down big and he's got to play hero ball. Next on the list is Coastal Carolina at Buffalo, which is an odd matchup, but yeah, Coastal Carolina traveling to Buffalo. That total is 57.5 points, pretty high, 6th highest on the slate. And Coastal Carolina is a 12.5-point favorite. Their team total is 35, which is top 5 on the slate. So you kind of like that. Coastal Carolina is not going to sneak up on anybody. in terms of even in the DFS world. I mean, everybody knows the Chanticleers after last year. So I don't think they'll necessarily be unnecessarily, unpopular, that people are going to play them. And you have Buffalo coming in at 22.5, 19 out of 24 in terms of implied team total. Probably not a lot of excitement on the Buffalo side. Lead us next to Miami, Michigan State, which I think it's Michigan State heads down to Miami for this one.
Yeah, they do. So I'm interested in this game because I think it will be fairly close. The point total is 45.5. Miami's 6.5-point favorite. I think that might shrink come game time. I'm not really sure what to make of this Miami team quite yet. Their defense has not been very good. Derek King has not looked like he's healed from the knee injury. So I'm interested in this game probably more from like a real life perspective than an actual. I'm not sure how much value is found in this game. I think there's a couple of players that I like, but overall, I think that this is going to be a close and potentially fun game.
I agree. This is an interesting game. I mean, one thing I have to say in 2021 so far, I don't know if this has any, I don't know how it honestly is compared to other seasons, but it seems like there's a lot of interesting non-conference matchups, some weird road games, Michigan State traveling to Miami. That's just kind of unusual, but makes for a very interesting slate. I agree with you. I think this game's going to be closer than the 7-point spread. We got Vatech heading to Morgantown, West Virginia, a very tough place to play. And that means West Virginia is favored by a field goal. Team or game total 50.5. That's 8th highest on the slate. But it's because it's a close game. Individual team-wise, they're both middling. West Virginia with a 27-point team total at 12th on the slate, and Virginia Tech at 24 points. That's 16 on the slate. So, kind of middling in terms of what each team is going to do. Not a lot of excitement, I don't think, in this one. So then we've got another interesting out-of-conference matchup. Cincinnati G5 Darling headed to Big Ten Indiana. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, so this game is 8th in terms of what the total looks like, 50.5. There aren't a lot of like super high point totals this week. So this is a game that I think will be mostly defense. We think Cincinnati's defense is very good. Indiana's defense hasn't shown the same pizzazz they had last year, but the spread's within 3.5 points, which I think is pretty favorable to Indiana, to be honest. But I think this is going to be a defensive matchup where we could see some efficient Cincinnati defense like we've seen so far this year. So I'm excited to see, how Cincinnati comes out and plays against an Indiana team who struggled so far this season.
Yeah, that Cincinnati defense is no joke, and I think they're going to give, unless Indiana can somehow turn around their offensive line and Michael Penix becomes basically like healed from, I think he's coming back from an ACL, and he does not look the same. I have a feeling that game could be nasty like the Iowa game was, unless that offensive line can really figure out their protection. Another weird out-of-conference game. Minnesota heads to Pac-12 Chicago, or Pac-12 team Colorado, in a battle of Big Ten and Pac-12. This one is just another kind of blah game. I mean, a close spread, point total 49.5. That's 11th highest on the slate, so right smack in the middle. And then, of course, both teams should score similar points. 26-24 is what the projected totals are about. Colorado coming out on top there. But again, in terms of on the slate, both of these teams are right in the middle. 13th for Colorado, 16th highest point total for Minnesota. So again, nothing too exciting there, but maybe cherry picking one or two. Next, we've got Purdue traveling to Notre Dame.
Yeah, I think this game is interesting from like a real life perspective, and I think from a fantasy perspective, right? I think there's going to be a lot of high scoring potential in this game, despite Purdue having an okay defense thus far, and Notre Dame's defense is supposedly good. I actually think this is a game that could go over the 58.5 point spread. And, the implied team totals are 33 and 26. So I like this game a lot for DFS purposes this week. So I think this is a game that we'll probably talk about a lot of players in. But it should be a good real-life game as well.
I agree. And that Notre Dame defense, they got taken by a bad FSU offense. Granted, that was week 1. Maybe there was some really good scheming. FSU was prepared for that all offseason. But then also in week 2, I'm having trouble remembering who they played, but I think, again, the defense was not too impressive.
Toledo. They almost got beat by Toledo.
Right. Toledo basically almost beat them and coming back in the second half. So Kobach, their running back, had over 100 yards. That's right. So, that defense is getting gashed. And I think Purdue is kind of sneaky there. So then we've got Clemson and Georgia Tech. It is at Clemson. So Georgia Tech maybe down their quarterback, heads to Clemson, who Georgia couldn't even muster much against. So this is tough. Clemson with a team total of 40 points. It's third highest on the slate. And Georgia Tech comes in dead last on the slate, only projected for 11 points. I can't imagine we want to play any Yellow Jackets. But there could be some Clemson players, I guess. I actually don't know if we're going to talk about many, to be honest with you, even though they're third highest on the slate. Then we got Alabama heading to Gainesville. What do you think about that one?
I think 15.5 is an interesting spread. I'm not sure how good the Florida offense is going to be this week under Emory Jones. If Anthony Richardson doesn't play, I'm not really sure which way that's trending. But, he did get nicked up last game. But Florida's going to struggle, I think, offensively. The total's 58.5, and I think Alabama's probably going to score the big chunk of that points. Their implied team total is currently 37. So I'm not sure this game will be very close. I don't think Vegas thinks it's going to be very close either. But I do think that Alabama has some really interesting secondary, tertiary players that we'll probably talk about tonight, and we'll probably, could make a big impact on Saturday.
Absolutely. As a Florida fan, I know it's Alabama, but still it's disheartening to have a home game and you're a 16-point dog. It's just, that's how good Alabama is. Even in a rebuilding year. Right. Okay. So then we've got the Trojans of Southern Cal, newly without a coach, heading towards Washington State with a point total of 48.5. That is right in the middle, 12th highest on the slate. Or actually, I guess that's last on the slate because there's only 12 games. So it's 12 out of 12, not 12 out of 24. That's last on the slate in terms of the total. USC, though, is 10th out of 24 teams in terms of their team total at about 28 points. And Washington State comes in at 20 points, which is near the bottom of the barrel. USC's defense probably a little better than expected so far. However, if they have a weakness, it is in the pass defense in the secondary. So maybe that Washington State offense can do some damage. And then next, we have got my graphic actually had to restart there. Wake Forest and Florida State.
This is one of the closer games on the slate, and it actually is the highest total at 61.5. So I think this game is probably going to be high scoring. I think it's going to be fairly close. Wake Forest is actually a 5.5-point favorite after Florida State's debacle loss against Jacksonville State on Saturday, which is just straight up embarrassing, to be honest. I think, this is a game that could actually really be fun to watch. So back and forth scoring. I think Florida State really has to figure out some stuff on offense. And I think Wake Forest is kind of chugging along with some big performances so far this year. So I'm really interested to see how this game plays out from a real life perspective, but also I think this would be one of the more fun games on the slate to really put some players in on.
Yeah, I have that basically all that in my notes as well. And then finally we round out with Tulsa going to Ohio State. No surprise here, Ohio State with the number 1 point total of team total on the slate at 43. I think that's going to be a trend this year. We also have Tulsa coming in almost dead last. Their offense has been fairly disgusting so far. and probably no different here going up against the Ohio State front seven. And they come in at only 16.5 team total. So not sure you want any golden hurricane action, but obviously Ohio State's going to be very much in play. So that, brings us to the actual players. We like to get a layout of the field, and then we want to take a look at the players. So, usually we like to go towards just the quarterbacks, I think, is what we like to do first. I know that we were talking earlier, and you do like CJ Stroud, who's sitting at a obscene $10,000 salary after his 400-yard performance on a bum shoulder. Are you going to be paying that premium this week?
I don't think you have to, but I do think he's in play. Tulsa is terrible. They are the only thing that will limit Stroud is if Ohio State gets to a big lead and he has to come out. But I mean, we've seen these quarterbacks put up 250, 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns, just taken out of the game by halftime. I think that's in Stroud, I think that's within Stroud's range of outcomes. I don't think you have to play him, but I do like him. I'm not totally avoiding him. I think that he has a fairly safe floor, and I think that he has a pretty high ceiling, given that he could just, like I said, put up 250 and 5. This is not a good Tulsa team, and they gave up 300 yards to UC Davis week 1. Like, I don't think Stroud's going to have a problem producing this week.
Yeah, that's totally. I mean, yeah, you can't argue it. It's just a matter of obviously you don't have to cram him in at that price, but it makes a lot of sense, and you can just lock and load and don't have to really sweat. Like you said, though, the only thing is a blowout potential, which, we've said this before. If it's a blowout, it's because Stroud probably has 303 already. I think before they pull starters, they will score 6 touchdowns or so. So, I mean, is he going to get 3 and 1 in the run rushing? I think 3 touchdowns feels very likely for Stroud. But at 10K, is that really enough? I'm still not sure. So, continuing on, we got a lot of big guns at the top. So we got CJ Stroud, 10K, Rattler at 9,500 against Nebraska, who may keep it close enough to where he wouldn't get pulled. I mean, why do we like Rattler? I feel like off the top of my head, he hasn't been terribly impressive, but maybe he has more than I think because the expectations are so darn high for him.
Yeah, he's actually been really productive. He's averaging over 30 DraftKings points per week. I mean, through 2. He played Western Carolina and Tulane, so it's not like he's played world beaters. But it's not like Nebraska is any different, right? They're only allowing 182 yards passing per game, but they're actually ranked 82nd in EPA per pass attempt. So despite a low yardage total, they're actually really bad per pass. So I'm not really worried about Rattler this week.
And that's going against who? Illinois, who's awful as a pass,
and Buffalo,
who doesn't even pass. So
so Nebraska, they don't have a good pass defense. And
this could be really getting exposed here.
Yeah, and I mean, he and Stroud are both expensive, but I do think that they have a path to 250 and 303. Like I don't think that's a crazy outcome to get to in your head. I think a lot more than other players on the slate. So I mean, I like Rattler a lot. Last week he had 243 and 5 on 26 attempts. Yeah. It was Western Carolina's. It's Nebraska this week, but I mean, it's not like Nebraska is that good.
Are they that much better than Western Carolina? Let's just be honest. Okay, so I think this is really interesting. Is there a chance that people who are simply looking at numbers, maybe pass yards allowed per game, something like that, would think that Nebraska is better than they are and maybe shy away from paying a premium? And so therefore you could get Rattler a little less popular than he should be. And the other thing about Oklahoma is, they brought Eric Gray in, and I think a lot of us thought he was going to be featured, and he just flat out has not been featured really in any way. And they just they're kind of like playing that Kansas City offense. They're just throwing the ball all the time. And so I don't think you really need to worry about, the one thing with Ohio State is I feel like if Mayan Williams and they want to get Travion Henderson going, they could just run the ball, and I think they'd be happy to do that. But Oklahoma is not going to run the ball, I don't think.
No, and I don't think they have to. I think that they want to throw it with Rattler, and I think they've one of the country's higher neutral game pass rates. So it's not like they want to run the ball if they don't have to. Gray was fairly efficient last week. Kennedy Brooks was involved week 1. I don't really know what that split looks like, but I do know they want to get Rattler touches. I do know they want to get him involved. And I think that he's on his way to like a Heisman campaign. So I don't think it's crazy they leave him in maybe like a series or 2 longer than they would otherwise to really like pad his stats. And that's more narrative. I mean, I don't know that Lincoln Riley will do that, but like, I don't think that's out of the question either. Like, just leave him in. Maybe he gets one more touchdown than he would otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is I've noticed with Oklahoma, and what I've noticed with Kansas City in the NFL is, it doesn't really matter game script. Like, their offense just runs by the pass. Like that offense it's driven by the pass. That's what they do. And, they will not throttle down and just start slamming guys into the line just because they have a 3-touchdown lead. Like, their offense is passing. They're going to keep doing it. So don't think you run the risk of them just sitting on it, maybe the closing minutes of the fourth quarter or something. But I think you're going to get 3 full-blown quarters of passing the ball and probably, 5 minutes in the fourth, even if it's a blowout. Then maybe those last 10 minutes, it turns into kind of just nothing. Yeah. But I think that's something we don't have to worry about with Oklahoma, which makes Rattler a little more interesting. I mean, I think 4 touchdowns doesn't feel crazy. Kind of like Stroud, and you're getting a $500 discount. And I think a little less of a chance that they run the ball than Ohio State. We got to talk about Bryce Young. Kid's been incredible. I mean, really passing the eye test so far. He shredded Miami, who might not be that good after all. Then we had Mercer, so who knows? Now they go into Gainesville, and I'll tell you as a Florida fan, I don't think our defense is very good. I think if nothing else, Todd Grantham's defense is extremely predictable, and Bama will know exactly what we were doing on every third down. I expect them to convert probably like 80% of their third downs this week, which is going to be demoralizing. I don't see a problem playing Bryce Young. I guess Bama does. You may run the risk that they just kind of run the ball, but that offense also kind of trending towards just being a pass-centric offense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with Young this week. I wish we had seen more rushing upside from him so far. Like, he really isn't running that much, and I that's probably by design in the Alabama offense, to be honest, like, because we know he can do it, and he's very mobile. But I wish there was more upside, because I think that game probably doesn't stay close for long. And I know Alabama will run the ball opposed to Oklahoma, who will just continue to throw.
Yep.
And I like Young this week. He just sits in a zone where I think I'm less confident with the high-end range of outcomes for him than I am with maybe the higher priced guys, than maybe 1 or 2 guys like slightly lower than him. So he's fine. I really have no issue with Bryce Young, and I think he's probably going to post 20, 25 points. Does he have a 30-point ceiling in him? I'm not sure.
I mean, I think he does, just because it's Bryce Young and it's Alabama. But yeah, I'm kind of with you there. For 300 more, unless I cannot get there, I kind of might feel more comfortable with Rattler. And I think that, if you're thinking about game script, I think the Oklahoma defense might be a little worse than the Bama defense. Maybe Adrian Martinez runs a little wild and keeps it closer than you think, and they have to score 6-7 touchdowns, something like that. I don't know. But all right, interesting question. And then we're going to have to start cherry picking down the line here. But I mean, there's still 2 guys that I think we should be very interested in. DJU, who should get right against Georgia Tech. Desmond Ridder, Cincinnati goes to Indiana, whose defense has not looked quite as good as we maybe thought they would be. We're getting a little discount here. DJU at 8,800. I mean, I do think 30, 35 points is absolutely in his range of outcomes. And then you'd be getting a discount and getting a high point total. Their point total is like top 3 on the slate. Cincy, similar situation. I love how their offense runs through Ridder. He runs, he passes, he does everything for them. You interested in either one of these 2 guys?
I like DJU more than I like Ridder, and that's part of because I think that they will pass, because Georgia Tech actually has a good rushing defense. They have been 26th in EPA per rush attempt, so they're efficient on like a rush attempt basis in really preventing like big plays. And it's not like they've played anybody huge, right? They played Kent State and NIU, but it is, I think, indicative of how Clemson will probably game plan for this. And I think this is the game that DJU gets right. I think at some point he's going to have like a 350-4 game, and we're like, oh yeah, that's the guy that is replacing Trevor Lawrence. And we all think he's great. And Clemson's 17th in the country in pass rate. I think that they have a high neutral game script pass rate as well. I think people will stay away from DJU this week because similar to what Rattler looked like, right? Like they're only allowing 123.5 yards per game, despite being 80th in EPA per pass attempt. Like they are not a good pass defense. They just kind of probably look good on paper for some people. So I like DJU a lot this week. As with Ritter, I mean, Ritter, I feel kind of similar to him, how I do Bryce Young. I don't know if the ceiling's there for him. I think that they're probably going to lean a lot on Jerome Ford as well. I think Indiana's defense is better than a defense they faced. I don't think Ritter's going to throw for 300 yards, and I don't think he'll rush for 100 yards. So I don't know what his ceiling is this week. I just think I prefer DJU because I think DJU has the path to do it because I don't think they're going to run as much. While Cincinnati, I think, is going to have Jerome Ford very involved.
Right, and I definitely think of all these teams, the Cincinnati defense has probably the best chance to potentially like keep Indiana under 10 points if they play anything like the Iowa game. I mean, Indiana just hasn't looked good at all, especially on offense, so which I think was a little surprising to everybody. I don't feel like Cincinnati is a matchup to get right. I think that game has the biggest chance of being just like way out of control early. Like, I mean, you flip it on in the first quarter, it's already like 28-0, something like that. So, I mean, defensive scores, who knows? I just think that game could be extremely out of hand. Even though the spread's only 3 points, that seems crazy. And we'll talk on the 3 and Out plug for that show. Will drop on Friday, where me and Chris, as well as Will talk about spreads and bets we like. But hint, hint, Cincinnati covering 3 is going to be kind of a smash. And then I want to talk about Grayson McCall too. I mean, there's just a lot of options here this week. I feel like this is the week where we have a lot of options in a lot of places, so we're going to have to make some tough decisions. Grayson McCall comes in at 8,300. I mean, he's another one of those quarterbacks that just the whole offense runs through him. He contributes on the ground. He gets rushing touchdowns. He can throw the ball. He can get to 300 yards, although I don't think he's done it yet this year, but he did last year. And Buffalo's not good. So the question is, if McCall has got 4 touchdowns in him against Buffalo, I think that's not out of the question. And at 8,300, you're getting a pretty good discount compared to the rest of these guys.
Yeah, I love McCall this week. They're allowing 10.71 yards per pass attempt, which is 125th nationally. And they played Adrian Martinez last week. And Grayson McCall is a far more efficient passer than Adrian Martinez is. Grayson McCall is actually one of the more efficient passers in the country. He's excellent on a per play basis. And the only concern I think with Coastal is that they have just the lightest pass rate in the country. They only throw 39.1% of the time, but Grayson McCall's a rusher. And so like he'll contribute in both areas. I think he is probably the safest floor of quarterback in like the 8K range. And I think that he has the ceiling because how involved he'll be probably throughout the game. I mean, Grayson McCall is just like such a good player. Buffalo, the spread's 12, so hopefully it stays close. And I think that there's a real possibility it does. I like McCall a lot this week. He's one of my favorite plays in that price range.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. And just looking at, I mean, this year they've played 2 games. He's thrown for about 250. He hasn't been as much of a runner yet this year, but last year, I mean, you could easily expect 40 plus rushing yards. He went over 51, 2, 3, 4 times, scored 7 rushing touchdowns on the ground in 11 games. So, you were getting a rushing touchdown, every other game or better. And then threw for 300 yards 3 times. So, he certainly has the potential to hit one, or even he hasn't hit a running bonus yet, but it's in his range. I mean, he's had 75, he's had 96 yards. It
Absolutely
wouldn't be out of the question to get to 100, but he can certainly. And like you said, Buffalo's pass defense is absolutely terrible. He's completing 82% of his passes. So he does not need that many attempts to have a lot of completions compared to some other quarterbacks.
No, absolutely not. And they allowed Adrian Martinez to get 100 yards on them last week. So, I mean, I don't know if McCall.
Better.
I don't know if he's a better rusher, but he's definitely a better quarterback, and he can run the ball. So I would not be surprised if he has a huge game against Buffalo defense that we know they let Nebraska put up 28 points. So that's really all I need to say about Grayson McCall.
I mean,
I think he's a great play.
Yeah. It's absolutely true. Okay. We're at the halfway mark for this podcast, a little over maybe. And we're only on quarterbacks because there's so many to talk about, but I'm going to give you 3 names here. I want you just to kind of give me quick hitters about them. They're guys we've talked about. So if you're writing this down or whatever, remember these names as we dip under the 8,000 mark. Sam Hartman for Wake. We talked about Sam Hartman. No, I'm not remembering who else. Sam Hartman, we liked. Who else did you like in that range? You had another guy. Oh, Jack Plummer for Purdue.
Plummer, my guy.
So those 2 guys are right under the 8,000 mark. And then tell me, are you interested in any Gator quarterbacks with what's going on there?
No, I'm not falling into the trap I fell into with Tariq King. I do not think Emory Jones is nearly as good as Tariq King is. He's going to struggle this week. I love Jack Plummer and I love Sam Hartman. I think that game with Purdue is going to be a high scoring affair. The Spartans have not been very good. Plummer already has like 558 and 6 on the year. I really like Plummer this week. I think that 7,900 is a great price for him. Hartman similarly, Florida State has just not been good. They're allowing 10.46 yards per pass attempt. They're ranked 87th in EPA per pass attempt. Hartman should really have no problem. He has 5 games with 300 more yards in his last 12 full games. So he also has legit bonus potential in a game that I think that they're going to throw a bunch in, or maybe not a bunch, but I think they'll throw efficiently in. So both guys I love. The last guy in this range, the 7K range, I still like Adrian Martinez. I'm going back to Adrian Martinez this week because I think that he looks terrible for 90% of it, but you play him anyway, and you're like, oh, like that's not a bad week for Adrian Martinez.
He can have an 80-yard.
Just don't watch him. Just don't watch him. Yeah. Just don't watch him. Just play Adrian Martinez. Just don't watch him.
And then if you're building some kind of super lineup with the running backs and receivers, you can go crazy level discount. Brandon Lewis for Colorado. I know Chris kind of likes him. He is a rusher. He hasn't done a lot yet this year, but he has the capacity to, give you 60 plus yards on the ground if they let him run a little bit. He's only 55K. And if you want to go really crazy, Davis Brin for Tulsa at 4,800 against Ohio State. Like that is insane for a quarterback. He hasn't been very good, but maybe you luck into like 225 yards and 2 touchdowns for 4,800 or something like that. And maybe some sneak rushing touchdown or something wild. But, if you're just doing a full on YOLO tournament and want to load up on all the other positions, 4,800 for a starting quarterback is kind of insane no matter who it is.
Yeah, I like both. I actually really, really like Brandon Lewis this week. Minnesota's defense has been straight bad. 121st in yards per pass attempt given up, 97th in EPA per team pass attempt. They also allow 4.5 yards per carry, 96th in rushing EPA per play. They just have not been a good defense. I think with his ability in both phases of the game, I think that he could have a very strong weekend at 5,500. I really like him. Brin is like a one-off tournament play where you hope that the Ohio State defense that's ranked 90th in both pass yards per pass attempt and EPA comes this week, and Brin maybe ekes out enough at 4,800 to like pay off for you. Like I don't think that's crazy, but there's also a chance that he gets you under 10 points. Like he's averaging under 10 points already. He hasn't played Ohio State. It's just know that that's in his range of outcomes. Like don't go crazy with him, but I think that he has some tournament potential.
Yeah, I mean, why wait till Sunday as an entity is not telling you to go play these super cheap quarterbacks. They're super cheap for a reason. I agree with you. The rushing floor for Lewis, he's had 45 and 70 something yards in his 2 games. So that kind of probably gets you to 10 points almost no matter what. And he gets a touchdown or 2, maybe rushes for a touchdown. You can see a path for 18 points for Lewis at his salary. That's not half bad at all. But Bryn is just a complete. I'm not saying do it. I'm saying if you feel like you want to load up on everything, he is a quarterback at that price. You can do something. We are not advocating for playing those guys this week. All right.
I'm advocating for playing him in a one-off. If you want to get funky. Sure. Again, if you want to get funky.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I try to avoid if you want to do it in a tournament, because you can literally make an argument for absolutely anybody if you want to do it in a tournament, but that's the type of guy you're going to be talking about. So,
yeah.
All right, we're probably going to need to kick into hyperdrive here. The running backs, I am not terribly impressed with our choices here. I mean, Reese White, who splits time, is the most expensive running back on the slate. Mayan Williams, Ohio State, splits time again. I mean, Trevion Henderson is going to keep working into that. I do think Mayan Williams has 2 touchdown potential. I mean, he could, they're going to score a lot, but I really don't know if you can count on where it's going to come from, especially out of the backfield. Trey Potts, he's at 7,300. He's getting that Mo Ibrahim workload, 20 plus, carries, I think, are in the bag for him. How's Colorado's defense so far?
It's actually okay against the run. It's definitely the best run defense they faced. And the thing
that's shocking.
Yeah. The thing with Potts that's really driven me away from him for the most part has been that I don't think he can really run inside. And I think he's going to have to succeed this week against Colorado. I mean, they're only giving up 2.8 yards per attempt. I just don't think that they're particularly I just don't think Potts is a crazy efficient player that can run inside like Ibrahim could. So I think he is an avoid at his price point. I just think he got priced up too far.
Nice. Well, he had a big week last week.
Sure. Yeah.
I really like the next guy. Kyron Williams comes in as the 4th highest running back on the slate. And I mean, it seems like pretty decent chance he winds up as the number 1 running back scorer. I mean, he's going to catch 3 to 5 passes. So that's, more than the rest of these guys probably. Maybe Reese White catches that many, but I don't even think that many. I think Kyron Williams has the highest receiving upside, which obviously we know is huge in PPR scoring. And getting in the end zone twice, we both already said we think this game is going to be fairly high scoring. And he is a workhorse. I mean, they give a little to Tyree, but it's pretty much Kyron Williams' backfield.
Yeah. No, I like Kyron this week. He's averaging 21.5 opportunities, which we talked about last week, how I'm defining as targets and rush attempts. So 21.5 is really good for a Purdue defense that's outside the top 60 in EPA per rush attempt. He's 9 targets through 2 weeks, 55 routes run. He's involved really all facets of the game. They're 7-point favorites, so the game script should be in his favor. I really like Kyron Williams as well. I think he's my favorite play above 7K for sure.
Yeah, I like that. I'm not interested in Kenneth Walker yet. Going down to Miami.
I am interested in Kenneth Walker.
You are? Okay, tell me about Kenneth Walker. I just guess I don't think he's that good. He had that huge week 1, though.
So Miami's defense is 72nd in EPA per rush attempt allowed. They're letting in 150 yards per game. They let Cameron Peoples post 17, 95, and 1 on 5.6 yards per carry. They also gave 51 up to Nate Noel for App State. They just let App State run all over them last week and had really no problem doing it. They almost also lost to App State, and App State is a rushing team. I think Kenneth Walker is both better than both Peoples and Nate Noel. I like him this week. I think he's in line for maybe 30 touches. And 30 touches again, really.
I believe.
I don't think Miami's defense is very good against the rush, and so we'll see more. But I was not impressed how they did against App State last week.
Well, that's why we do this together, Chris, because you opened my eyes, and I think I'm interested in Walker a little bit now. On the surface, I would have just kind of, he didn't play much against Youngstown State, got 7 carries, but it was Youngstown State. They didn't need him. First game out of the gate, 23 for 264 and 4. If you guys missed that against Northwestern, So Jerome Ford versus Indiana. You seem to think that they will run the ball a lot. Are you in for 7K?
Yeah, I like him as well. He is also involved in the receiving game. He's run 30 routes so far, so I think that he can probably catch a couple passes if he needs to. Indiana's defense has just not been particularly good. They're 76th against the rush this year. I'm not impressed. They let Tyler Goodson run all over them. I don't particularly like Indiana. Like, I'm shocked at the spread, first of all, and I just think Ford's a pretty good running back. He's averaged 16 rush attempts and 2 blowouts this year, 7 yards per carry, and on back-to-back 100-yard games. I mean, I like Ford. I don't think he's as expensive as he should be. Like, I think he should be prioritized over Mayan Williams, and he's like 500 cheaper. So yeah. I like Ford.
Stop me if you like any of these guys, but I don't think I do on first glance, just for game script purposes and blow up potential. Letty Brown, Corbin, Borghi hasn't even been catching passes this year. Brian Robinson splits time. Lynn J. Dixon splits time. McClellan's, that Bama backfield's going to run 3 deep. Kevin Marks is the workhorse for Buffalo, but Coastal Carolina is pretty good on defensively. I know offline we've talked about Christian Beal-Smith. So we're starting to get down here. We like some guys in that 7K range, but now we're struggling to find somebody until we hit. I know you like Cameron Harris, who kind of is the last man standing in that Miami backfield. Do you see 20, 25 touches in his future?
I don't know about 25 touches, but I think 20 is in the range of outcomes. I think there are cheaper guys that like better. I think there's guys that are a little more expensive. So I know you're not big on Letty Brown and Corbin this week, but I think I like both. I think Letty Brown.
You can't play them all, Chris.
I'm just saying I prefer Letty Brown.
12 backs we like.
I'm just saying I like Letty Brown. He's getting 21. He's getting like 20 opportunities per game. He's running 60 routes. He has 8 targets already. Virginia Tech 74th in EPA per rush against the rush. Like, he's involved in all phases. He is what RB1 on the Slate upside. Corbin also 62% of the team rush attempts. Wake Forest can be beat on the ground. He has 6 targets through 2 weeks. I like both those guys. I'm avoiding everybody else probably above 5K.
Fair. Above 5K.
I like
that means
Cameron Harris.
Cameron Harris is kind of in the doghouse then.
A little bit.
Okay. Down. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs at 5,100 is so tantalizing, but I can't do anyone against Clemson. No. All right, let's dip below 5K. Let me see if I can guess who you like. Oh, I'll let you say it.
I'll let you say it because you like him as well. This is all you.
Let's dip down into the bargain bin. King Doriao for Purdue. Due to injury to Xander Horvath, has inherited most likely a feature back role at 4,600, and we like the game script. Tell me a little more about King.
Yeah, so when Horvath went down this week, he had 12 carries for 74 yards and a touchdown. Doesn't get UConn again. Does get a struggling Notre Dame defense that's allowed 5 yards carry, and they're 85th in EPA per rush attempt, so they've not been efficient either. He's just a feature back for a good creative offense. So at 4,600, I really like Doru. I think that he could surprise a lot of people this week. So I mean, 4,600, you're getting a feature back in what should be a high-scoring game. I'm excited for that one.
Yeah. And he actually, as a true freshman, he was pretty involved. And then Horvath showed up last year and kind of became the guy. But King Dorio has a history of being kind of like the primary back. I'm going to let you introduce the next one. We're going to go back-to-back bargain bins.
Yeah. No, I like Shamari Jones at Coastal Carolina. He is a $3,300 savings off Reese White, despite having only 2 fewer rush attempts and the same number of targets through 2 games. The touchdowns have gone White's way, which is fine, right? But Jones is still getting very similar opportunity, and he's getting the same opportunity in the red zone. It's just happening to go White's way. And so Jones has been efficient. He's averaging 7.5 yards per attempt. He does have 2 touchdowns himself through 2 games, but this is also a coastal team, like I talked about earlier, has the nation's lowest pass rate at 39.1%. They should be like an even split between the two. I love him at that discount as 12.5-point favorite. So like Shamari Jones is a guy that I'm really, really interested in to save some salary on the slate.
Yeah, I mean, you could potentially roll King I struggle with his name. Doriu and Shamari Jones for a total backfield like under 9K or under 10K, certainly under 10, which would be, pretty impressive. I think I like King better for Purdue, but yeah, Shamari Jones, don't forget that name. Any other super cheap running backs? I don't think we've got anybody.
When you get lower, it gets a lot more dicey. So I think those are probably the lowest that'll go this week. There's been some couple values, but
yeah, I feel like we'd be remiss to not mention the Miami backs behind Cameron Harris. They're out Knighton, they're out Don Chaney, so it's Cameron Harris and it's 2 true freshmen, Cody Brown, who's at 3,600, and then Thad, what's his name? Thad Franklin, I believe, who's another true freshman. The tea leaves seem to suggest Cody Brown. The pricing suggests Cody Brown would be next in line. He's kind of a bruiser, so I could see him getting some kind of short yardage touchdown at 3,600, but I do think it's going to be Cameron Harris. But if you want to get funky with it, those would be some insanely cheap running backs who are going to get some touches that you could play. All right, let's take it to wide receiver. And we got Javion Hiley coming in as the most expensive wide receiver. I think it's warranted. He's been outstanding, and he is the absolute alpha for Coastal Carolina. Grayson McCall's #1 target. But like you mentioned, they don't throw a lot.
Yeah, I'm not in on Hiley this week. He is he's not like getting a massive target share. Like he is getting a lot of targets. It's a concentrated target share. Don't get me wrong. And he's a very explosive player, but there are just better options that are $3, $4, $5, $1,000 cheaper that like I almost prefer over him. So it's just it's a hard sell to really get up to 8,300 where he's at.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Ohio State. I think we already talked about we like Stroud. So Olave is in play at 8,100, but the price difference between Olave and Garrett Wilson continues to be a real head scratcher. Wilson comes in at 6,400, and they're not even that different on the season. I do not understand this. But I mean, yeah, I'm probably not playing Olave. I'm going to just play Wilson.
Wilson has more targets through.
It makes no sense. Games. I don't understand.
He's 33% of Ohio State's target share. Like Wilson has not had the touchdowns go his way, so he isn't as sexy as Olave is right now. We're gonna just play Garrett Wilson again, like we played him last week.
Like you said Wilson has more targets. I guess Olave has more catches, 50 more yards, but
yeah,
same amount of touchdowns, same amount of average per reception. So they're about the same. I mean, the price difference there just makes no sense.
No, I really Garrett Wilson 6,400 is a great price. So I love him again this week.
Figure out a way. You can't go wrong with some of these other guys. I mean, Marvin Mims, we already talked about how much we like Oklahoma and their passing attack. John Mechie has proven to be he's not really an alpha because JoJo Earl is getting some run. At least got some against Mercer. But I think in a full game against an SEC opponent, it seems to be John Mechie. So good for him. I did not think that would happen, but it's happened. And then we can't go wrong with David Bell. Like David Bell is probably the clearest alpha on the slate in terms of just like dominating every single target in his offense. Yeah, so
he really is.
I mean, it's one of these things in college. You just don't even see this on the NFL side. Like just a guy who's just going to get 70% of his team's targets or something like that. So, in a game they should be trailing. I have no problem with David Bell at 7,700. I mean, 10 catches is, in his range. I actually got to check the Prize Picks line on his receptions because if it's even 6.5, I think I'm going over.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm taking over. Probably going over on the yardage too. He has gone below 78 yards once in the last. Since 2020, the start of 2020, he's gone over 78 yards once, including this season. Like
Well, as a
we
freshman, he was great. I wouldn't even be
Oh,
shocked
yeah.
if he hasn't done it his whole career.
He's just such a rock solid player. Like David
Rock
Bell's
solid.
David Bell's
Rock solid.
great in your lineup. The only one that I would even look at that's above him is Drake London, and it's a similar idea to David Bell. There's just such a concentrated target share. London has 24 targets through 2 games. I mean, that's you're going to be hard pressed to find that. And Washington State's defense is line 268.5 yards per game so far this year. I mean, I don't think that game has a very low total. It's only 48.5. But London is such the alpha in that room that, I mean, he could have another 12 targets this week. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I'm fine with London this week.
Yeah, one thing to keep in mind, he tweaked his back apparently in the game. They think he's going to play, but he's got the little red flag next to his name. So just keep an eye out for that. We do have to wrap this up, but we have some guys we still definitely need to talk about. Talk to me about Wake Forest. We like that game. We like FSU players. We like Hartman.
We love Ja'Quari Roberson.
Yeah, baby. Smashing the slate.
He's priced down against like the country's worst pass defense. I just don't really understand. They allowed Zarek Cooper of Jacksonville State to throw 330 yards after Jack Cohn lit them up week 1. Like, I don't understand why he's priced so far down. I think he's the best dollar for production receiver in this range. He's clear number 1. I love Roberson. So this is actually, so I don't usually pay up for wide receiver. I think you can find values in other places, but I think this is the week to pay up for wide receiver. There's some really nice prices that allow you to do so. Roberson, Bell, London, Garrett Wilson, all above 6,400, all really nice options this week.
Yeah, I mean, those 3 would be very intriguing lineup. And then, I was throwing out some names, but I know we got to go down into the bargain bin again. Let's just bring them up. Jalen Naylor for Michigan State. This guy had a really high yards per, reception last year at 19.8 for Michigan State. He was very involved in their, granted, anemic passing game, but highly involved. And then this year is second on the team. But he's only 4K, which I think is just too cheap for Naylor. I mean, their leading receiver, Jaden Reed, has 33 receptions. Naylor has 26. Naylor's averaging, 19. Or this was last year. I'm sorry. This was last year. He was second on the team. He had the most receiving yards. He had the highest yards per catch. He had the most receiving touchdowns. But then so far this year, it's been much more Jaden Reed. With 245 yards to Naylor's 59. But at 4K, I think he's still going to be involved in this offense, and they're going to probably, like you said, Miami's defense is not very good. I kind of like Naylor if you need to save a little.
Yeah, he actually has more targets and more routes to run than Jaden Reed. And, I mean, Reed's just benefited like 2 big plays so far this year. Naylor is consistently like a big play guy for them. So I really like Naylor this week. I mean, Miami's defense is 95th and 99th in yards per pass attempt given up and EPA per pass attempt. So, I mean, they're close to the league, the average and the bottom in the country. So I think Naylor's a great value this week.
Any other receivers you want to mention? I think that's kind of it for me, because I think I'm with you. I'm like paying up for wide receiver, maybe cheaper running backs. We'll see what happens. I mean, a lot can change between now and Saturday, which, shout out, tune in Saturday morning for the tailgate. We're going to go over all of our guys who are gone up and down since the recording of this show. There will be changes, but right now, I'm not sure I love any of the cheaper guys. I know you have a couple. Throw out some names for us.
Yeah, so a little higher up is Joe Nagata. He's been really, really solid for Clemson. They have a high pass rate. That game should be out of hand fairly quickly, and I think he could be a big part of that. I also like Travell Harris. USC has struggled. Harris went 6 for 80 and 2 last week. They feed the slot receiver there, so I really love Harris. And some other salary savers, kind of like Jalen Naylor. Isaiah Likely is actually tied with Highlight for the target share with 31.1. So I think that he could have a good week this week. He just hasn't found the end zone yet, and I think if he does at 4,400, great value. Mario Williams, 4,100. He actually leads the team in targets for Oklahoma. He's running the 3rd most routes. So he's in for 3 wide receiver sets. Again, really nice value. Bryce Ford Wheaton at West Virginia. He leads the team in target share despite being $1,500 cheaper than Winston Wright Jr. Again, really, really great value for a bad Virginia Tech defense who allowed 283 yards to Middle Tennessee State last week. And then the last guy, which is like a really deep name, Jackson Anthrop at Purdue. So he is behind David Bell and he's behind Payne Durham in the target pecking order, but 12 targets through 2 contests. We think this is going to be a high total. I think he's a nice way to get action in this slate and in this game at a very minimum price point. So he's a guy that I'm maybe plugging in here and there and seeing what he does. I mean, he's got 12 targets through 2 games, so it's not like he's not involved.
Yeah. And I like potentially playing with some lineups where you have those 3 receivers we really liked on the kind of that are more expensive. And then, in your flex spot, make a couple lineups where you have all 3 of those big receivers and then just pick one with JoJo Earl, which you didn't mention, but I also like him for Bama at UF. He's getting plenty of targets, but maybe those 3 and then likely those 3 and then, some of these Naylor. So just keep the 3 stud receivers and then plug in some of these like lesser guys and just where you just hope your lineup with one of them pops. Of course, you need to get the other stuff right too, but that's one strategy where just keep interchanging, have most of the things the same and have, some tournament lineups with these guys. And you just need one of them to go off and you could bink a tournament maybe. Well, unless you have some closing thoughts, I think we can wrap it up. I mean, it is just kind of my closing thoughts are going through this. There's a lot of plays that are appealing, which is the first week. I think we're getting a little bit settled. We have some actual 2021 data to be working off of. We've seen these guys on the field twice. And I feel like I'm getting my sea legs here a little bit about what to expect. I had a decent run last week, except for the quarterbacks, which were injury, bad luck. But it's going to be tough because there's a lot of plays I want to put out there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is going to be a challenging slate because of that. But, I think this is a slate where you pay up for a wide receiver. Maybe you stay in the middle range at running back, go Corbin, go Daru, however you pronounce it, not exactly sure. Maybe Shamari Jones, Letty Brown, that area. Lock in some big name wide receivers, stack them with quarterbacks in games that we like. So I think that's kind of the path that I'll be taking this week.
Yeah, and then again, just a shout out for the tailgate on Saturday morning. I mean, by then I'll pretty much have all the lineups I'm playing locked. I mean, I'm not going to necessarily just run down all my lineups, but I'll have a little better idea of what I feel real comfortable with. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about guys we're on, we're off. And, definitely tune in for that. That is a valuable piece of information in addition to the midweek. Why wait till Sunday? First look at the slate. And then tune in on Friday. We'll be dropping the 3 and out, which we're going to record shortly and drop it on Friday, which is our bets. We're going to be taking some wagers and making a money line bet, a spread bet, and then a parlay. And we're keeping track of that score. I am currently in the lead. Whoop. But that could change any moment. So tune in for the 3 and out. If you haven't looked at it yet, it's a new show this year we started, and we would love to get you involved there. And as always, we are available on Twitter at AlfredJF for me, at Chris Moxley 19 for him. And we'll see you out in those streets. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you Saturday morning.